In this section, we'll be dealing with specific types of word problems. For example, problems that ask you to do something with fractions where there's more or less involved. When doing word problems that ask you to find an amount that is increased or decreased by a certain fraction, there is usually a shortcut you can use. So for example, what is 1/5 less than 80? This is a fraction this is a more or less with fractions type word problem because you're asked to increase or decrease by a certain fraction. Now the shortcut here is to remember that 1/5 less than 80 is the same as 4/5 of 80. So if you have, let's say, something like that looks like this, where you have 5 parts to it, and you want to find 1/5, and this whole thing, this is 5 parts. So this is 1/5. This is 1/5 of it. This is 1/5. This may be a long cake with 5 parts to it, and this entire thing is equal to 80. If you want to find 1/5 less than this, you just get rid of one of the fifths, and you're left with 4/5. So 1/5 less than 80 is the same as 4/5 of 80. In other words, you would write this as 4/5 times 80. You would then reduce the 5 and the 80. This becomes 16. So 4 times 16 is 64. The answer here then is 64. So whenever you're doing less, a fraction less, take that fraction away from 1 and multiply. What if you have something like this, 1/7 more than 42? You do the opposite. 1/7 more than 42 means instead of having 7/7 of 42, you now have 8/7 of 42. So you're doing the same thing as you did with the less, when there are fractions that had a less in them, but instead of decreasing by a certain fraction, you're now increasing by a certain fraction. If you have a total that is equal to 42 and you want a seventh more than that, you used to have 7/7. You would add 1/7, so now you have 8/7 of 42. Here, 8/7 of 42, you would just reduce this by 7, you get 8 times 6, which is 48. And this makes sense because also visually, if you think of something that has 7 parts, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's say 6 and 7, and this is the total thing adds up to 42. That means that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parts. Each part has to be 6. If you want a seventh more than this, you need to add one more seventh. When you add one more seventh, you're in other words adding another 6. 42 plus 6 is 48, because you now have 8 of the sevenths. You used to have 7/7, now there's 8. The other type of specific word problem is an age problem. So how would one turn the phrase, Sam is 15 years older than Caroline, into an equation? The easiest way to deal with age problems is to use the redistribution method that we went over previously. You first determine who is older and who is younger. Then you add to the younger person or subtract from the older person. You then set the two equal to one another. So, in the case above, we have Sam is 15 years older than Caroline becomes Sam minus 15 is equal to Caroline. Because we're comparing Sam and Caroline, because Sam is older, we take away from Sam. And we're going to take 15 years away from Sam so that they'll be equal to one another. Another way to do this, obviously, is to say that Sam is equal to Caroline plus 15. Because in order for Caroline to catch up to Sam, she has to add another 15 years. What about, how would one write X years ago, Jim was 10 years old as an equation? Well, another way to do these age problems is to remember the following. X years ago means that you subtract X from the current age. X years from now, or in X years, means that you add X to the current age. So the above question we've written as J minus X. In other words, X years ago, we're talking about Jim, so X years ago means Jim's age minus X was 10, so is equal to 10. So try these questions on your own. Pause the lecture, try these questions on your own, and then when you're done, resume the lecture and take a look at the explanations. Let's take a look at question 1. So town A has 1/4 more people than town B, while town B has 1/5 less people than town C. If there are 400 people in town C, how many people are in their town A? Let's start backwards because that's the most concrete information we have. We know that there's 400 people in town C. So town B has 1/5 less people than town C. That means that town B has 4/5, if we use that shortcut from before, of all the people in town C, which is 400. Then we would reduce this. 4/5 of 400 is going to be if you reduce 5 and 400, you get 80 up top. So this becomes 4 times 80, or 320. So the number of people in B is 320. We're then told that town A has 1/4 more people than town B. So town A has 5/4 as many, or 5/4 of the people in town B. So we multiply 5/4 times 320. 320 can be reduced to 1 and 80. 5 times 80 equals 400. So actually it turns out that there are as many people in town A as there are in town C. Let's take a look at question 2. Mary is 15 years old and William is 40 years old. In how many years will William be twice as old as Mary? We're comparing Mary and William. We know that Mary is 15, William is 40. The question is, in how many years will William be twice as old as Mary? In how many years means you have to add a certain amount of years. How many is x? So we don't know how many years to add. So that means in x years, Mary will be equal to m plus x, and William will be equal to w plus x. M plus x is going to be 15 plus x, and w plus x is going to equal 40 plus x. Now William will be twice as old as Mary, which means that we have to multiply this amount by 2, because it's the smaller amount. 15 plus x is smaller than 40 plus x. When we do this, we get 30 plus 2x is equal to 40 plus x. Subtract x from both sides, and then subtract 10 from both sides. Or rather 30, sorry. Subtract 30 from both sides to get 30 on the other side. So now we get that x is equal to 10, which means in 10 years, William will be twice as old as Mary. And that makes sense, because in 10 years, Mary will be 25 and William will be 50. We used the redistribution method for this question. We did that by setting up the unknowns. The 15 plus x is what Mary is going to be in x years. The 40 plus x is what William is going to be in x years. And then the relationship between them is that William's age is going to be twice Mary's age. So we have to multiply Mary's age by 2 because it's the one that's smaller. Let's try question number 3. If Ivan will be 19 years old 8 years from now, how old was he x years ago? So 8 years from now means you add 8. So Ivan's age now, let's call that I. So Ivan plus 8, that's Ivan 8 years from now, will be 19, which means Ivan is equal to 11. So how old was he x years ago is going to be 11 minus x, because remember, years ago means you subtract this from the age. So x years ago, Ivan was 11 minus x.